What do you call it? 5 windows. It'll hold a 1 foot by 3 foot window. It's actually more. And this is crazy. I don't know how I did that. But it's actually level-ish. Scraped off the things. We're just going to pretend that this is about 13¼ inches. When you do like a... I tried ripping these down, but I got a 13 amp skill saw, but even that 13 amp skill saw trips the breaker on the generator. So I'm just going to put in some little rips to kind of level that out. So I got it at angles, 7° angle. I don't know exactly what all I'm gonna do, you know. 2 options. Outside mount, where it's got a flange that you mount to the outside edge. Or inside mount, where you just screw from the side of the window into the side of the thing. Outside mount is nice because it keeps the water on the outside of the wall, you know. And then inside is nice because it's more accessible, you know. I don't gotta reach as far. Probably do outside mount, but I haven't looked to see what all there is. There's 1 foot by 3 foot. I checked that, you know. I didn't check mounting styles. 5 windows, 4 blocks in from the corner, 2.5 blocks wide, 3.5 blocks in between. So that's basically 40 inches, 16, 32, 40. And then with inch and a half, 39, or 37. And a 3 foot window, 36. Actually needs 35. So there's plenty of room for play. Yeah, I gave it that bevel, 7° angle, so there's mortar under there. Put in a bed of mortar, then squish the thing down on it. So it's got a nice mortar bed. So any water that does get in there flows away. It's got this stuff, some foams, and there'll be some spray foams back in here, you know, once I'm actually tightening things up, you know, do a little bit of spray foams. But this is a vapor barrier, and there's one underneath it. Oh, right here. It's kind of covered in mortars. So I messed up on my door. I was thinking 93, but it should be 83 for a rough opening. So my door rough opening is 10 inches too high. So these top 2 are still, so once I did this one, I put in the last stud, you know. No real room in here to put a drill, you know, for drilling out this block, you know. And this is still pretty fresh concrete, you know. Started filling over here, I think, and worked that way, and then worked my way over to there, you know. So this is, I don't know, maybe a week old or something, this concrete. Still pretty green. So I don't want to jostle it, but once I get around filling the rest of the voids, you know, that's going to take a while. There's my hole. 4-inch drain line. This is, you know, more for, more for, what do you call that? You know, it's not this isn't like Schedule 40, this is the thin stuff. Female receiving end on the outside. I'll get a 22, you know, which will angle up, you know, into a vault up there, 22 into that vault. And then that'll eventually go up the hill for water supply coming in, you know, and electrical going out, you know. Up top there, It's gonna be my fish farm, kind of where the shack is. Eventually that'll be the fish farm, water, rainwater collection, and fish tanks. So once this concrete sets up, you know, once I finish filling the voids, this will be set up enough. And then I'm just gonna cut it down, you know, an inch and a half below this, you know, so this will be resting right here. That'll give me room for my concrete header. These will all be concrete headers. Let's get some gravels. 3 gravel, 5 sand. Rained last night, so it's got about an inch of rainwater in there. That's kind of what it naturally accumulated. So I'm gonna give it 2 shovels of cement. Nice little view. 2 shovels cement and give it a mix and see if it needs more water or not. You never know. Try to get it on camera. So right here I'm filling in the courses 8, 9, and 10. And I'll give it a little more. So it would be normal mix would be let's say 6 sand, 4 gravel, and 2 cement. That would make like a normal concrete. But doing 5 sand and instead of 6, and 3 gravel instead of 4. Just to make it a little bit stronger. You know, it's not going to be crazy stronger, but a little bit. Now that I'm getting towards the top of the wall, kind of these right here is basically what the house is going to be anchored into. You know, the most direct anchorage. So it's more important. So this video is filling in these top 3 courses, and then setting window frames in their openings. Got it filled up to there, so just pouring it. This one goes here. Rebars every 2, and then once I set the course, there'll be a J-bolt there, J-bolt there, J-bolt there, and a J-bolt in that one right there, kind of right next to this one. That one right there, the 3rd one in. I haven't done any first-person shooter point of views, so normally I would spritz this with water, just so the cinder block would, because it's dry. And then it did rain, so there's probably some waters down in some of those. That there is, I can't look good. But this is so watery. I'm not going to moisten up the block at all. Just let the block drink up this moisture. A little scoopy scoop. And the cool thing about only filling up 3 voids is it goes pretty quick. Instead of filling up, 3 blocks, instead of filling up 7 blocks. squeezing through into this one. Bad thing about the runny concrete, not as strong. Good thing about it is it gets into all the little nooks and crevices. So once I get to the window opening, and now I got the tub in the window opening, I'll fill those bottom ones, and then top it off with mortar. 5 sand, 2 cement, and give it a gallon of water. Actually less, because it just rained. Water in it since it just rained. There's a lot of water in the sand. Mix this up with some mortar, filled the voids. This is the one hole. There's the other, not filled yet. Mix some mortar, put that down, put that on. Ended up giving it the whole gallon, putting it on heavy on this inside edge. That's the high point. Nice and watery. And this is a little too watery, but it's surprising how quickly the mortar gets wet. Just way too dry, way too dry, way too dry. Yeah, a little bit of water, a little bit more water, and then it's just bam, way too wet. This will work, it's just a little. I want this up probably about an inch in the back. And then it'll get tapped down to about 3/4 of an inch. You know, put that window casing in there and push it into place and squeeze out that top 1/4 of an inch so any low spots will get filled in. That should be good. This is gonna be a rough one. Wow, this is a little runny. I guess normal people would add more cement and sand to it to get it to the right consistency. But it's like, yeah, it's what normal people do. I have done that before when it's really bad. This will not be too bad, hopefully. Basically just falling into place. I'm just giving it a controlled fall. Get it worked into those corners a little. That looks good. So I got 2 short ones and a long one. 2 short ones are for the sides. Long one is for the bottom. This came from the darkness. 300. It's the inside of the raw. So it's got a pretty bad curve to it. Just kind of get that set in there. Perfect. Look at that. So beautiful. I don't want contact, you know, between the saying and other things. So something. Using that. I'm going to put the camera down. So it's just sitting there. It's not actually pushed down at all. No point in wasting the mortars. Scrape it off. I'm gonna give this a, and I'm kind of looking at it, you know. I'm looking for roughly about a 1/2 inch. It's so soupy. Oh, where do I got them? So before I put in the side ones, I'm gonna have to squeeze the bolts through dry fit, just so I can get my alignments down. Because if need be, I can kind of peek in the little crack to see where I want to go. I can look in through this and kind of get an idea. I would rather have too much and squeeze out excess than not enough and have voids. Those voids become little pockets of humidity, you know, and condensation droplets to form. So, you know, this is one thing I will waste a little on. Easy peasy and lemon squeezy. This one's a little trickier because it's already got stuff in there. This is really a two-handed project. Tricky keeping this thing oriented. Just one hand, and I'm gonna push it. Okay. Got that one in. That one in. Give it a little clean up. flush it up with this edge. You know, bottom's kicking out. So I'm just gonna I got this thing. Mallet. I'm liking that. So once the mortar sets, you know, there's no pounding it anymore. Let's get it pounded. And I would check it for level, but that's really not critical. I got so much, these are so bowed, and I got so much play in there, that's not critical. My level's way over there. I don't want to go down there. Both of them are way over there. So I'm liking this. Cleaning. This is going to be a double squeeze. So did that. Now I don't want it. Ooh yeah. Eating beans. I don't want it, you know, creating a mortar lip, you know. So I'm kind of just using this rounded edge of the thing. Oh, look at that. Had a pebble in there. And another pebble. To kind of squeeze everything down and out. And then later on I can trim this foam back with a utility knife. Pretty easy. So now I want to put in my side things. I don't need to do that now. Well, actually I kind of do actually, never mind. Because I can just pull these out right now. But once this concrete sets, these will be locked in place. This is going to take probably about a 2-hand job, trying to pry this out without jostling this too much. And then the real 2-hand part is sliding this behind that. So I'm liking that. Give this a scrape. Cleans. It's a little not good, but I'm not going to be able to get it any better until I tighten up these bolts, you know. So basically I backed off these nuts, so it's a couple threads, so I can tighten it, kind of keeping the bolts as far back as possible, so when I tighten it, it'll just kind of be fully tight when it's flush. So I got that, so I'm going to mix in that. I did 2 shovelfuls instead of 3 shovelfuls gravel. I'm going to toss that 2 shovelfuls of gravel and then continue on filling the voids.
Companies building a light rail line in Tel Aviv. U.S. officials think China's investing in Israeli infrastructure as a stepping stone to the Western European market. So China can say to Europe, we've met Israel's high-quality standards, we can meet your standards too. The other thing the U.S. is worried about is China and its security services getting in on Israel's high tech. Pentagon official Wu again.
The Chinese have shown interest in Israeli technology. In some areas where China has made investments or pursued activities around the world, the security services have followed or been a part of those dealings.
Chinese investments in Israeli tech startups shot up a few years ago in fields like cybersecurity, digital health, and automated car technology. Simon Weintraub, a Tel Aviv lawyer representing Israeli tech firms, has an office full of gifts from Chinese business colleagues, like a cute panda picture.
We were getting, requests probably a couple times a month of new investment deals, most of which went through.
But U.S. officials think Chinese access to cutting-edge technologies can help China's economy and military compete directly with the U.S. The U.S. is coming up with rules to block Chinese investment in sensitive U.S. technologies. The U.S. has asked Israel to come up with its own screening system. But U.S. officials accuse Israel of dragging its feet. Asaf Orion of the Israeli Institute for National Security Studies says Israel sees China differently.
Israel and the U.S. have different threat perceptions with China because, well, Israel is way tuned against its traditional enemies, and China is not one of our enemies.
The Chinese ambassador wrote in an Israeli paper that China has no ulterior motives and its role in Israel is being blown out of proportion. Israel wants access to the world's second largest economy, so for now it's not restricting its companies from accepting Chinese investments. But some Israeli companies are deciding on their own to refuse Chinese money, according to Weintraub, the lawyer in Tel Aviv.
I get calls all the time from Israeli companies who have either taken money previously from China or are considering to take new investments from China. They're very nervous about taking money from China and somehow being under scrutiny in the United States for activities vis-a-vis China.
One Israeli company he represents recently turned down a multi-million-dollar offer from a major Chinese venture capitalist. The company works in sensitive medical records, and it's worried that it could be cut off from business with U.S. hospitals if it has Chinese investors. But Weintraub says this company and others might get creative, setting up new corporate structures to work with China anyway.
I know that China isn't going anywhere. China is a superpower and a rising superpower. Israel cannot ignore China and has to find a way to be part of that balancing act.
The Balancing Act will be tapping into China without upsetting the U.S. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Iowa caucus goers will make their voices heard in person next year, the way they always have. The Democratic National Committee shot down a plan today that would have allowed Iowa Democrats to participate in the caucus remotely. They cited security concerns. NPR's Miles Parks covers voting and election security. He's here to tell us more. Welcome to the studio.
Hi there.
Can you explain this plan? What was being proposed, and why did the DNC respond the way it did?
Sure. So to start with, caucusing is really different than voting. Right? In a caucus state like Iowa, you have to go out in person and take part in this process that can take hours. So voting rights advocates have said for years that this disenfranchises people. Hours, people who can't take work at nighttime, people who can't get child care, and it means turnout's low. In 2016, the turnout rate in the Iowa primaries was less than 16%. So Iowa Democrats and Nevada Democrats, who also proposed a plan, they caucused there too, they proposed this plan to remotely caucus. Not a lot of technical details were made public, but it seemed like it was a phone-based call-in system. The DNC takes a look at this plan, they have their security folks look at it, and they say, no go, this is not secure enough to be used in 2020.
At the same time, we bank online, right? And we do all kinds of things on the phone and virtually, so why would it be a problem?
Yeah, so cybersecurity experts basically just say voting is a much more complex action than anything else we do online or over the phone. I talked to Joseph Lorenzo Hall, who's the chief technologist at the Center for Democracy and Technology.
Imagine banking where everyone only has $1 and you never get a receipt and no one can ever know who anyone paid for anything. Doing accounting in that kind of a system becomes really, really difficult.
Hall also said that in all these other transactional situations, there's room for a tiny bit of error or even a tiny bit of fraud. It's kind of baked into the process. Whereas voting, we get one shot at this thing, and it has to be right. So you can't take a chance. Even if there's only a remote possibility that something could go wrong, you can't take that chance.
What are the implications of this for the Democratic Party going forward in this primary season? As you said, these are people in key states who are asking for this.
Yeah, so Iowa Democrats say they're still going to brainstorm ways to make this more accessible, though they note that's only a few months away that their caucus is happening. More broadly, we're seeing this kind of butting of heads in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party wants to be the party of accessible voting rights, while at the same time being the party that takes election interference seriously. And what we're going to see over the next year and a half, is that those two ideas kind of come into conflict sometimes.
That's NPR's Miles Parks. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
is NPR News.
Saturday morning, Dorian heads towards the U.S. and people in the hurricane path prepared. Brexit by hook or crook. The Prime Minister maneuvers to get the UK out of the EU. What could justice look like for victims of the opioid crisis? Sports, books, Natasha Bedingfield has a music moment and more. Saturday and weekend edition from NPR.
Listen to those stories tomorrow morning from 7 to 9. This is Murray State 91.3 WKMS, also at 89.5 in Martin and Union City, Tennessee. Support for WKMS comes from Paducah's Maiden Alley Cinema, this weekend featuring The Farewell, a headstrong Chinese-American woman returns to China when her grandmother is diagnosed with terminal cancer. There she struggles with the cultural divide on dealing with death. Showtimes and more are available online at maidenalleycinema.org. It's 3:30. I'm Kelsey Blanco. Stay tuned for more All Things Considered.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chen and I'm Bonnie Cornish. Coming up, the first British ship carrying enslaved Americans landed in Virginia in 1619. The Tucker family says they can trace their ancestry back to that ship.
This is American history. It's not just about us. It's about everybody. And it has to be told. It has to be told.
Now News.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. The Democratic National Committee wants to block a plan to hold virtual caucuses in Iowa next year in a move to increase participation in the first presidential nominating contest. Here, Scott Detrow explains.
The goal of virtual caucuses was to include Iowans who can't take off work or physically make it to the evening meeting that will decide the caucuses in February. Iowa Democrats had put together plans for people to participate via phone. But the Democratic National Committee is coming out against the plan, warning that it doesn't meet security and reliability standards. Democrats have been vigilant about online and voting security ever since the DNC was hacked by Russian operatives in 2015. Leading to the public disclosure of embarrassing emails. One presidential candidate is blasting the DNC's decision. Former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro warns it will disenfranchise tens of thousands of Iowans who won't be able to physically caucus. Scott Detrow, NPR News, Washington.
The National Hurricane Center says Dorian has strengthened to a major Category 3 storm that poses a significant threat to Florida and the western Bahamas. Officials say there's plenty of gas in Florida, but it's a matter of getting to the state's filling stations. AAA says Florida will continue to get shipments of gas as long as its ports stay open. Meanwhile, forecasters say the storm's path has a wide cone of uncertainty, and it's a few days away from making landfall in Florida, but people are being urged to prepare. Director Ken Graham of the National Hurricane Center says the impact of a slow-moving storm is often worse than a fast-moving one.
Following a 140-mile-an-hour forecast, Category 4, so big-time wind, but also this slow movement. That's on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so not a lot of movement, so that's a lot of time to produce more rainfall.
Dorian is the strongest storm so far during this year's hurricane season. You're listening to NPR. EU foreign ministers say they're open to an initiative de-escalating tensions between Iran and the U.S. as long as the 2015 nuclear deal remains in place. Terry Schultz reports from Helsinki following last weekend's G7 summit meeting with world leaders.
With it still unclear whether President Trump and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani will agree to hold talks, Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said the EU's priority is that developments do not further jeopardize the agreement that limited Iran's nuclear program in exchange for economic benefits.
If something else can be built on it, this would be welcomed and accompanied by the European Union.
The EU supports the nuclear deal despite the U.S. pullout last year and the fact that Iran is again enriching uranium after accusing the EU of falling short in financial support. EU diplomats also defeated a U.S. request to help provide security in the Strait of Hormuz. So far, Britain is the only European government to send ships. For NPR News, I'm Terry Schultz in Helsinki.
Ford Motor Company is calling back more than 500 million trucks and SUVs because seat backs may not properly restrain folks in a crash. The recall covers certain 2018 through 2020 F-150 pickups, Super Duty trucks, Explorers, Expedition SUVs. Ford says no crashes or injuries have been reported. Stocks finished mixed on Wall Street ahead of a round of U.S. tariffs. expected next week. On China, this is NPR.
What makes a song an anthem?
I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy power.
I'm Elizabeth Blair.
And I'm Tom Cole. Join us as NPR shines a light on music that unites, challenges, and celebrates American identity.
American Anthem, the special from NPR. Support for WKMS comes from the members of First Presbyterian Church in Murray, located at 16th and Main Street. First Presbyterian is a congregation dedicated to following Christ's model and working for social justice, inclusiveness, and ministries helping people in the community and across the globe. First Presbyterian Church Murray, a ministry open to all. You can find more information online at fpcmurray.com. This is Murray State's 91.3 WKMS, also at 90.9 in Madisonville and Owensboro.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where research findings on how the immune system could attack cancer were shared worldwide to help change the course of cancer care. More at danafarber.org/beatcancer. From Heather Sturt-Haga and Paul G. Haga, supporting African Wildlife Foundation, working to ensure wildlife and wild lands thrive in modern Africa. Learn more at awf.org. And from the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Elsa Chang. With more tariffs looming in the U.S.-China trade war, American companies are growing more pessimistic about the outlook for doing business in China. But 87% of U.S. firms with operations in China say they still haven't moved production to another country, and they have no plans to do so. That's according to a new survey from the U.S.-China Business Council. To find out why most plan to stay put, we called up Jay Foreman. He's the CEO of Basic Fun. It's the toy company that makes K'Nex, Lincoln Logs, Cutitos, and Pound Puppies. Jay Foreman, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I understand that currently 90% of your products are manufactured in China. Tell me why. What benefits does China offer you to base your manufacturing?
China offers sort of a suite of benefits, if you will, which is a highly trained labor force, a well-financed infrastructure, a great safety and quality control regimen, excellent transportation and communication points, and basically a system of production for light industrial that's been set up over a 30-year period.
I mean, how possible would it be to replicate those conditions in, say, Southeast Asia or India?
It would be really difficult. For example, if we went to Vietnam, which is a great country with great manufacturing, it's only 10% of the size of China. So if you just moved 5 or 10% of Chinese production into Vietnam, you're going to max out the capacity of their workforce, and that's going to increase prices, increase rents, and make it more difficult for products to be produced there at the same competitive prices as we've been getting from China. You can go to India, which has got a huge population base, but India's infrastructure is really not set up for this. You know, we've developed protocols, at least in the toy industry in China, where we're able to make safe, high-quality product at a great price. Mm-hmm. There's no system like that set up in India. It could take 10 or 15 years to set that up. It's taken us 30 years to build our production base in China. And then bringing production back to the United States is not possible and realistic because we don't have a labor pool here. The president is closing the borders to low-skilled labor. So who's going to make the product?
Now, if President Trump does go through with imposing tariffs on toy imports from China after the holiday season, let me ask you, could you afford to maintain most of your production in China still?
Well, we really won't have a choice but to find a way to afford it, and the one way to afford it is we will have to, at some point during the course of 2020, begin to pass the tariffs along to the consumer.
So how much of a price hike are we talking for, say, like a Cutito?
I think we're thinking about everything from sneakers to blue jeans to toys to flip-flops to iPhones going up 15 to 30% in the second half of 2020. And by the way, what happens when you move it to India? Mr. Trump, the deal maker, will make a deal with China sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, or somebody else will be in office and they'll make a deal. Well, everybody's moving their supply chain to India,
And then India will become the next target for trade.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. How has that uncertainty affected daily operations in your company now?
Well, instead of sitting down to plan on what we think kids are going to want to buy next year, we're sitting down every day taking a look at what tariffs are going to do to affect our profitability, when they're going to hit. We have something called Fun Friday here every other week, and we talk about what's happening in the business and what's new. And usually we talk about toys and holidays and all those kind of things. And now our employees are coming back to us and asking us how the tariffs are going to affect them. Should they be planning on buying a car? Can they expect a bonus? And it's hard for us to give them a straight answer on that because we really don't know how this is all going to affect us.
Jay Foreman is the CEO of Basic Fun, a toy company based in Boca Raton, Florida. Thanks very much for speaking with us today.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be with you today.
An update now on fighting in Myanmar that's been going on for decades. Several thousand people in Shan State have been displaced as ethnic minority insurgents fight for greater autonomy from the central government. Now, as Michael Sullivan reports, Myanmar's lucrative drug trade is increasingly fueling the conflict.
This month, rebels of the so-called Northern Alliance staged a daring series of surprise attacks against Myanmar's military in Shan State and beyond. One of them against a highly symbolic target uncomfortably close to Myanmar's heartland, says David Matheson, an independent analyst based in Yangon.
This was in Mandalay region, when they rocketed basically Myanmar's version of West Point. This is really quite unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this in decades of civil war in Myanmar.
The Northern Alliance, which includes the newly resurgent Arakan Army, also targeted a bridge on a major trade route with neighboring China. At least a dozen members of Myanmar's military were killed in the attacks, along with several civilians. They come at a time when Myanmar's military has been involved in fierce fighting with the Arakan Army in Rakhine State for months, Matheson says.
This is a truly national insurgency with multiple allies, and there's very little understanding of this. Then you have the United Wa State Army, the Shan State Progressive Party, all of these groups that have been around for a very long time, and are barely understood outside of Myanmar unless they need to be understood better. Otherwise, this conflict won't be resolved.
But there are a number of factors working against an end to Myanmar's long-running civil war. Understanding is just one of them. The government's refusal to budge on the ethnic group's demands for greater autonomy is another. And then there's money.
The biggest source of finance for conflict is clearly drugs.
Jeremy Douglas is regional director for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in Bangkok. He says the trade is much bigger now than it was decades ago, when the area was better known for its opium and heroin production. Now it's mostly synthetics like crystal methamphetamine or ice, destined for markets in Australia, Japan, South Korea, and beyond. A business the UNODC reckons is worth a staggering $60 billion a year.
You're a conflict actor in Shan State, and you've got to get income to support your fight. What do you turn to?
Richard Horsey is one of the authors of the recent International Crisis Group report, Fire and Ice, Conflict and Drugs in Myanmar's Shan State.
There isn't a thriving illicit economy that will make you the kinds of money that you need to sustain fighters. So you turn to illicit. Resource extraction, logging, money laundering, and of course, illicit narcotics.
And that's a problem because
pretty soon the profits from this became so large that they are the largest part of the Shan State economy. And so at that point, people start to be incentivized by the money and not just by politics.
Which makes it easier for transnational criminal organizations to operate in the area, under the protection of or in partnership with local militias. And not just militias from the rebel side, the UNODC's Jeremy Douglas.
There's militias out there in North Shan State, for example, that are allied with the government. And they know, and there have been very, very strong evidence through cases, seizures of drugs coming out of their territory. So it's clear.
It's also clear that all that money will make it hard to end the conflict and bring lasting peace, stability, and the rule of law.
You'd have to say that the ordinary person living in Shan State pays the highest price for all of this.
Richard Horsey.
They live with conflict, they live with insecurity, they live with bad governance, they live with poor services, and they don't have very much else to show for it.
And likely won't for a long time to come. For NPR News, I'm Michael Sullivan in Chiang Rai, Thailand.